The advancement of technology changing the way people think about themselves and the world around them is a story as old as time. From fire to the atomic bomb to the internet, whenever a truly novel innovation comes along to shake up the old order, there's a mad scramble to integrate this new idea into the existing ideological landscape. It's kind of like growing a new limb and not quite knowing how to use it at first. I use this metaphor purposefully to illustrate a point, which is that technology is an extension of the human form, a physical representation of our ideas. Our desires come to life. We use technology to accomplish goals not easily done physically. Of course, you know that. But if we look at the objects and systems we build as not only static, but as shifting and growing components of the human animal, then some interesting questions come to mind. What is the nature of this metaphysical limb? In what way does it interact with and affect the way we live? And how conscious are we of that interaction? What are the real consequences? There are studies being done on how social media affects the brain, how the way we use certain applications affects our dopamine receptors, and that's true with all apps, but especially social platforms. And that's a good example of something to think about when asking yourself why this would be important to consider, because the end result is a shift, however subtle, in not just the world around us, but in how we see ourselves. The medium is the message is a phrase coined by the Canadian communication theorist Marshall McLuhan in his book Understanding Media, The Extensions of Man. What that means is that the social or political content of a piece of media is secondary to the actual method of delivery and its effect on the psyche. McLuhan believed that the medium is another message itself and not one that is as easily grasped. The content within the medium or the content delivered by a technology to him was like a juicy piece of meat carried by the burglar to distract the watchdog of the mind. And I like that, but I want to get into some of the more physical aspects of this concept because more and more we are integrating technology into our actual bodies. So, where this once could have been seen as a purely philosophical conversation, it is quite literally true now for a growing number of us. You can clearly see that there is a human body that is separate from the devices you own. Even though the effect that they have on you and everyone else around you is fairly visible, you are still you, and a cell phone or a computer are still not a part of your actual body. But at what point does the difference become indistinguishable? Modern smartwatches and fitness trackers are embedded with a variety of sensors which allow for continuous real-time tracking of vital signs, things like your heart rate, your temperature. The continuous collection and analysis of biometric data creates a feedback loop where the technology learns about the user and adapts its recommendations. In this system, you interact with a device that goes on to influence your decisions at a later date, and so your actions are mediated by the tech. Your desire to get fit is still at the center. It's probably the reason you got the watch in the first place, but the added layer of a user interface between your thoughts and the things you go on to do is reason for concern just as much as appreciation. After all, these things can make your life easier, but if you're not careful or aware enough in regards to how you interact with them, it can spell great misfortune. How I interact with these devices becomes a part of who I am. Notice I didn't say if just now because, I want to pose two questions for you. What happens when a technology is so ubiquitous that it becomes essentially inescapable? And how can looking at technology as an extension of a literal part of who we are help guide us in the right direction? Things like telecommunication systems, the internet, car travel, these are things you don't just not do. They eventually become a part of the human experience that everyone understands on some basic level. And thus, that is what it means to be a human now. To have a cell phone in your pocket, a desk that you sit at while typing on a keyboard, and all of these other things. After all, am I not the chair that I'm sitting on? What might help you understand this on a more accessible level if you don't already, and I'm sure that you do, but I love to rant about this stuff. But what might help you understand this is to see yourself as a system and the things that you interact with as a part of the system. Eye tracking in social media involves using your phone's camera to monitor and analyze where your eyes are focused while interacting with social media content. This includes gaze timing and pupil dilation measuring, and then the app learns from that and updates itself according to user preferences that have been inferred from that information. It's another feedback loop, kind of like with the FitWatch. It makes the product better, and I put that in air quotes. Really, it is innovation as it has occurred throughout history, and with every new invention, it's user feedback, but on a scale never before seen and paced too rapidly for your brain to keep track of what's going on. Recent advancements in brain computer interfaces have made this conversation more prescient. Instead of external wearables, BCIs represent a deep integration of technology with the human nervous system. Technologies like Neuralink allow individuals to control devices directly with their thoughts without the need for muscular movement. This bypasses the body's traditional input output systems, the hands and the voice, making the brain itself the new interface. It's a direct extension of the human intent into the digital world. Recently, Meta has been working on decoding speech from neural activity using MEG and EEG data in combination with a deep learning model to interpret neural signals to a pretty high degree of accuracy. The ability to decode thoughts and intentions from brain activity, while incredibly exciting for accessibility reasons for those with physical disabilities, necessitates some pretty intensive safeguards. How do you think we should proceed? I'm not prone to thinking that we're all going to go full cyborg, but who knows, and why not also? Let me know in the comments. The future of all these things is unknown, but we can speculate based on what we see in our everyday lives as well as the history of development in these fields of study. If we are to consider these technologies as indelible parts of the human experience, though, then one thing is for certain: being mindful of how you interact with technology, as well as understanding that on some level you have very few choices, is key. What you do with that information is totally up to you, but the resources are out there to become more informed on the specifics of how our devices and the platforms we use affect us. If you're interested, I have more in store. Thanks for watching. Give it a like and peace.